everyone. It is the 7th of June. I haven't made a video in 3 days because I've been super lazy and I have really not gotten a lot done either. I managed to beat Doom, I guess. I was kind of disappointed with the ending, but I still enjoyed the game. Yeah, that's really about all that's happened in my life. I've just been kind of busy at work, haven't really had time to do any writing, and just because of the way the days lined up, I ended up taking 2 days off this weekend on the workouts just so that I could recover a little bit more and so that I could line my schedule up a little bit better for the future. So yeah, you know, not the greatest few days, but here we are. And I'm back to working out, obviously, yesterday and today. Really good workouts. And today I just had such a great leg workout. Like, it just really felt really good. Been taking some great selfies, you know, the usual. So yeah, that's been pretty awesome. And today I wanted to go ahead and do another viewer questions one. This might be the last one for a while. Wrap it up again. I got, you know, a few more straggler questions to answer, so we'll go ahead and jump right into those. So first one is at Geeky Lindsay on Twitter, says, "Are butts good or bad?" Well, I would say the answer is definitely good, and particularly if you like to squat or deadlift, both of which are great lifts, and you should be doing those things, so ergo, you should be having a really great butt too. So, you know, work on that. Butts are great. Next question is from Joe via email. He says, "How do you deal with ripped pants and underwear? I keep ripping them at the bottom of the crotch. Deadlifts and squats are steadily increasing, but my garments are splitting. Any tips?" So actually, Joe, this sounds like a huge humble brag. I know Joe personally. Joe's a former client. So this sounds like a huge humble brag, Joe. I'm going to call you out on that. But more practically, I've split a lot of pants myself in the past, like at least 3 or 4 different pairs, as well as, you know, some underwear as well. And typically in the cases that it happened, it was because I was wearing a pair of pants that I shouldn't really have been squatting in, like, you know, pajama pants, or what else? It was like pants I shouldn't have been squatting in, yeah, pajama pants, sweatpants that were a little bit too tight, underwear that was, you know, a little bit tight, etc. So, yeah, step number 1, buy some bigger clothes. And if you really have an issue in which you're buying bigger clothes and you're still splitting them, well then, you know, maybe plan ahead a little bit better. Aside from that, just if you know that you're going to do a squat day, don't plan on wearing your tightest clothes to go squat in. You know, pick clothes that you know are loose, or, you know, whatever. You know, plan ahead a little bit. Next question is at Zombie Detective on Twitter. So they say, "My deadlift is stronger than my squat, 30 kilo difference. How do I improve my squats?" So, what we typically, that's a very common issue, particularly with, basically, you know, raw lifters who, it's a very common issue. Raw lifters typically have a really strong squat or really strong deadlift. Very rarely do they have one, you know, both of them roughly the same. So, what I'll say is, what that means is that you've got really great posterior chain, you've got really great hamstrings, really great glutes, really great lower back, but you probably don't have very strong quads, because the big difference between the two lifts is that you're using your quads a lot more in the squat versus the deadlift, where you're using a lot more of the posterior chain. So chances are you have a pretty strong posterior chain, but not as strong of a, you know, of a forward and anterior chain. Another thing that it can be is core strength, defined very loosely, because some people they fail because they don't have very good core strength at the bottom of the squat. In that case, basically, it would be a matter of just adding in pause squats as accessory work, simply to help you gain a little bit of, you know, strength in the hole and a little bit of stability down there as well. Aside from that, you know, there are some interesting ways, and this one is actually kind of cool. There are actually ways in which not doing your calves can actually impact your squat as well. It's a rare instance, and it's not the most common, solution in the world. But sometimes you just need to strengthen your calves a little bit by doing a little bit of direct calf work. You're not going to hear that from a lot of strength coaches because, it seems like one of those like weird like garbage recommendations that would never work. But it is actually an issue, and it's the same reason why some people need to elevate their heels a bit when they squat, because they can get deeper into a squat when their calves are taken out of the equation a little bit more. So typically those kinds of people need a bit of stretching or mobility in the calf, to basically open that up a little bit and allow them to squat deeper. At the same time, the calf muscles do actually help at extending the knee joint, so strengthen them a little bit sometimes is the answer. Last question is from @KivaBay on Twitter. They say, how do I find a HAES trainer and avoid fat-shaming trainers? For those that don't know, HAES, or HAES as it's typically pronounced, basically refers to health at every size, which is basically the principle that you can be in good shape no matter what size you are. And I would say it's very, very difficult to find those kinds of trainers, particularly locally. Those kinds of trainers are not very common. The fitness industry is still very much mired in, the skinny equals healthy and, all that. And it's not true. And, in many cases, people's lives can be much, much better impacted by simply taking up a higher activity level and not worrying too much about their weight. I absolutely agree with that statement. Now, where to find them? So, again, you're probably going to have a difficult time finding anyone locally. A lot of trainers that do one-on-one sessions are not very good at advertising or marketing themselves, so they're just kind of, you don't know. You go to one guy and he'll have one training style, you go to someone else, they'll have another training style. So, it's hard to, it's hard to do that. It's hard to find people like that when they're bad at networking or bad at advertising themselves, because many of them are. Many of them are just sort of bound to, whatever brick and mortar gym they're working out of. So, obviously, online is a better place to look, and the problem with online is that chances are you're not going to find someone that can train you one-on-one in person. Because, chances are that they don't live in your area if you found them online. Now, that being said, even then, there's not really a ton of great, databases or resources or anything like that online. I myself, I work with that kind of training. I will say that there are certain communities within the fitness industry or within the greater fitness world that are much more accepting of that kind of stuff, and that includes basically strongman, powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting at the heavier weights. The reason for that is that these sports are sports that have for forever, for a very long time, understood that you can be an athlete at any weight. They've got super heavyweights, 300 pounds or more, competing alongside, like guys that weigh 150 pounds or something like that. There's a much bigger range of body types that tend to be expressed in those sports. And in fact, particularly, for example, with strongman was a sport that classically very much focuses on super heavyweights, the biggest of the biggest, because with strongman, the quest is to lift, the most amount of weight possible, and that means not even at all worrying about, basically, like strength to weight ratio or anything like that. So if you look into a lot of strongman communities, if you look into powerlifting communities, Olympic weightlifting communities are not as well defined because it's not very popular here in the U.S., whereas strongman was essentially a U.S. invented sport. It was kind of like a they decided to throw a weird contest every year for like as a TV thing, and then that just kind of stuck. And then powerlifting has been around a lot longer. It's kind of related to Olympic lifting, and yeah, again, you can compete at any weight, in any weight class, but there does tend to be a tendency for, like people to like the heavier weight classes where you can move, much more absolute weight, where you can see really impressive numbers. So, that being said, I couldn't really name, like a perfect place to look off the top of my head. The thing that comes to mind for strongman, at least, is called Lift Big, Eat Big. It's actually a guy named Brandon. I can't remember his name, but he's actually from the Seattle area, and it's basically a blog that's all about strongman training, and they used to do a lot of super body positive stuff that was all about getting bigger and gaining weight and getting stronger, and that's amazing. I couldn't speak to what the blog looks like now. I haven't honestly looked at it in a long time, but that might be a good place to start. And again, search online for trainers. Online coaching may not be everyone's cup of tea in terms of what they're looking for as as a coach or a trainer, but it may be exactly what you need. So that is all of the questions I have for today, and as always, see you guys later. Like, comment, subscribe, share, and as always, let me know if you have any more questions at all. Let me know. I'll answer. Thanks. Bye-bye.